Hello everyone, it's GigaBeef here, and today I'm going to show you 5 changes that you need to know about this patch as we're progressing through in 13.5, starting with an insane change for 5.56 ammo availability. In short, you can get M856A1, the mid-game cartridge for 5.56 weapons, at level 14, one level before the flea, because the quest requirements for accessing it have been removed. You probably all know this because I've talked about it all the time in my previous early wipe videos, but progressing to Cult Part 1 and unlocking 5.6A1 was a real focus for many players who wanted to transition over to using Western guns because it's a huge step up from M855, the starter ammo. But with this requirement removed, all you need now is Peacekeeper level 2. Peacekeeper 2 can be gotten at level 14 with $11,000 of trader spend and no rep requirement, meaning that it's certainly possible to get there before accessing the flea market. You have to get $6,000 anyway for Skier's Friend from the West 2, so you don't really lose anything other than a bit of short-term rubles by trying to get this early, but as you might imagine, this is most powerful when connected with the flea market one level later. These days there are loads of 5.56 guns to choose from. You don't need to fully mod an M4 with flea parts for 400k to make this caliber work anymore, certainly not in the mid-game, and between the MDR, the SCAR, the AUG, the G36, there are many decent options that use these bullets. The reason M856A1 is an important ammo in the first place at this point in the progression is how it dispatches class 4 armor fairly easily due to its 37 penetration, and I really do think that 13.5 is going to become the patch of 5.56 with this early unlock, at least until people get onto the better 7.62 guns. However, this is not all. At Peacekeeper 3, you can now buy M855A1. Funnily enough, you have to complete the Cult Part 1 to access this, which was the quest you used to have to do for 5.6A1, so now it's a halfway house for where that used to be, but this is still really early, and I think it's going to keep 5.56 at the forefront of the meta for a solid portion of this patch. I'll be doing a full video all about the early and mid-game guns in this caliber soon, so look out for that when it's ready. Next up at number 2, we have some really important hotkey changes. Lots of people have been having issues figuring out how to select a body part when using meds, which is the new feature this wipe, which means you can specifically choose which limb you want to heal. The most important use of this is to prioritize healing your thorax before other limbs without having to go through the inventory, but to do this you have to adjust your keybinds for those med slot items to release instead of press. If you don't change this, your PMC just uses meds normally with the old prioritization, status effects first and then the most damaged limbs second, which is often not optimal. But even once this is done, you have to actively use the scroll wheel whilst holding down the button. Just having the med hotkey held down is not enough for it to pop up. You need to use the scroll wheel to activate the drop down menu where you can then choose a body part to heal. So this is cool and all, but one valid question is how it interacts with the double medbind hotkey that I use and have suggested in the past. If you're not aware of what this is, in short, if you set one item slot to a keybind on press and another item slot to that same key but on release instead, you can select 2 different meds on one individual key press. I have item slot 4 set to keyboard button 5 on press and item slot 5 set to keyboard button 5 as well, but on release instead. Once you've set the keys to set it up on your actual player, in the inventory you press and hold on the first item with 5 that you want to activate, move your mouse over to the second item and release the 5 key when the cursor is over it. I use this to combine heavy bleed items like a cat tourniquet or a hemostat with a med like the car or the Salewa. If a heavy bleed is active on my character, the bleed specific item is used first because it's on press, and if a heavy bleed isn't there, the med kit is used second to heal a light bleed or HP if there are no more bleeds remaining. Fortunately, the new system works beautifully with this setup and we don't have to change anything. We pretty much always want to heal a heavy bleed as soon as it comes in, so that is the priority, and after that, because the medkit is already on the release key, using the scroll wheel activates the drop down from which you can choose to heal light bleeds or body parts as you prefer. If you really want the option to heal your thorax or head, for example, through a heavy bleed, then you will have to separate these keys out, as the press key will always get used first no matter what if the status effect that it fixes is present on your player. But personally, I'm happy with this behavior, at least for the moment. Number 3 is the pistol quick swap. As highlighted in my recent summary video, this is about 30% faster than the old swap and is significantly quicker than reloading most weapons, but now we have 2 keys for changing to a sidearm. The default is 1 for sidearm swap and double press 1 for fast swap, but the issue here is when you have 2 actions on the same key and the only difference is press or double press, when you hit the key once, the game has to wait for a small but noticeable amount of time to understand if you're going to press it again or not before it decides on what action to actually do. This delay is customizable in the menu, but even at the minimum setting it's 0.3 seconds or 300 milliseconds, which is a decent length of time when you're trying to change gun as someone comes around a corner. To make this worse, some players including myself have their primary on 1, secondary on 2 and pistol on 3, but the new keybind for fast swap pistol arrived with double press 1 regardless of how you were set up previously. I noticed that my primary to secondary weapon switch was slower than before, so it might actually be affecting you even if you haven't changed anything in your keybinds, which is why I ended up looking at this in the first place. So my suggestion is to have fast swap on your regular key and use left control plus that regular key again for normal sidearm swap. Just using my setup as an example, I now have 3 for the fast swap by default, and I have left control and 3 for a regular swap. This means that in the heat of the moment it's just your normal button and you don't have to remember anything fancy, but you still have a way of switching when you have time without losing arm stamina from the fast swap mechanic. While we're on the topic, this isn't new, but something that I adjusted a while ago, which is putting your primary and secondary on the same key with press and release, a little bit like the meds one, which means that you only ever have to press one key to swap between your 2 weapons. I found myself forgetting sometimes which gun I'd put in what slot, which then affected which button I had to press to get back to the other gun, but now this key swaps between them no matter what. I just press 1 and I don't have to think about it anymore. It always changes between my primary and secondary regardless of which one is in my hands. In at number 4 we have a bunch of quest changes, some of which are more important than others. For those who've ever tried the Kappa grind, you'll know that Psycho Sniper is a really painful one, requiring 10 sniper levels, but now 5 bolty kills as well with no deaths. While the skills part was super annoying in the past, the leveling bit has technically been made much easier because of some of the changes to the other quests. Tutorborn in Heaven no longer has a distance requirement and instead needs 5 bolt action headshots on every map except for Factory, which was on the list originally, but BSG deleted it a day or so ago. But this now rewards you with 5 levels in sniper skill when you finish it. Yes, you heard me, 5. This is a lot. Then we have Tarkov Shooter Part 8, which is now 3 PMC headshots with a bolt action without dying. Interestingly, this changes the quest completely, from having to rush around and find 3 players to kill in one woods raid to a much slower paced quest focused on staying alive and getting opportunities for headshots instead. The reward for this has also been reworked and now gives 3 sniper levels, so technically if you do both Shooter 8 and Shooter Born, you only need to be level 2 sniper beforehand to get to level 10 for Psycho Sniper, which is quite nice. Test Drive no longer requires a thermal scope to complete it and instead asks for the Schmidt & Bender 1x8 along with the usual M1A 60 meter minimum distance and the hybrid 46 suppressor. And Hunting Trip, the Sturman killing quest, also had the scope requirement changed from the Awful March Tactical to the TAC 30, needing a headshot with the M700. The other quest that isn't relevant to 99.99% of the player base was the Tracksuit quest, which has been reduced from 100 killer kills down to 50. Hooray. Finally, at number 5 we have a few other things that didn't really require a whole category of their own. Painkillers have had the chromatic aberration effect added around the edge of the screen, as well as the original desaturation effect, which I kind of thought was enough, to be honest. So this now gives you a proper downside to being on painkillers now, and almost incentivizes you to use those with a lower painkiller timer, so you're not stuck like that for ages once you don't need them anymore. This is BSG's way to try to prevent pre-paining. It's very different to how it was before, but I'm not entirely against it actually, as it does give a downside to having practical immunity from broken or black legs. The new trader UI system is quite nice, but items loading constantly as you move between them is kind of annoying. However, my Discord mod Easy8 noticed that if you scroll down straight away, it loads them all instantly. Hopefully this will get fixed, but in the short term it can make it a little nicer to use. Last but not least, if you are wondering where to get 762BP this wipe, after Punisher Part 6 you get a quest called Intimidator requiring 40 scav headshots. Pretty easy, and completing this now unlocks 762BP at Prapor 4 again. Quite a few people have suggested that these faster progression changes this wipe are due to the shorter patch, as we're expecting another wipe in December with real gameplay changes like armor plates, vaulting, shoulder swaps, etc. Which could be true, but at least for now there's a little less reliance on Workbench 3 if BP is on the traders directly. So go and check out my video on the changes to suppress weapon access at level 1 next. Otherwise, as usual, a big shout out to all my patrons, and as always, have fun in your raids.